Welcome one, welcome all to Decision Monday. It is that time of year where tough decisions have to be made. Who makes the 53? Who doesn't make the 53? And who ends up with one final chance on the Buffalo Bills practice squad? There's going to be a lot of tears tomorrow. There's going to be a lot of happy faces tomorrow. But tomorrow at 4 p.m., the Bills have to cut the roster from 90 men all the way down to 53 men to get ready for the Buffalo Bills season that's going to happen on September 8th. We're about a week and a half away from opening kickoff from Buffalo Bills football at Highmark Stadium on September 8th. But first, how you doing, Connor?
I
Lots of
need Bills
emotions.
football. That's what I
Bills
need.
football.
We are literally right on the cusp of it at long last. Finally, the preseason is over, and now we're on to some actual real football. The games count as of now. And
They do count.
now it's time to game plan for the Arizona Cardinals. But first we actually have to figure out, who's on the roster and who's not. And there's going to be a lot of very, very hard choices to make, I feel. But that's just to start. Uh,
To tease
we would
some
have,
of them, like Joe Andreessen, Balin Spector, Frank Gore, or Ty Johnson. When we get to the 53 man roster portion of the show, which is going to approximately come in about 15 minutes. You know, we're going to discuss, these different roster spots that, it's not I wouldn't say this Bills roster is the toughest to make. I think, you know, it's I wouldn't also call it an easy roster to make, but, it's one of those in between rosters where if you have a good performance throughout the entirety of the preseason, you have a good shot at making the roster. You go back to last year or the year prior to this, it was a difficult roster to make. So,
mm,
if you're a rookie right now, say you were sitting, roster man 60 at this point and you balled out really good in the preseason, your chances of making the roster go up because there's more spots to fill in areas of question of need.
yeah, you're right about that. So I think there's definitely a lot of questions that we're going to have to answer right before the 53-man roster is finalized. And more so is what do you do with all of those really great players that showed out in the preseason
Hmm.
to avoid getting them taken by another team? Because I guarantee you there's going to be players that if we were to cut, they will not make it back to our practice squad. They will get claimed on waivers before they even have a chance to get back to us. But that's,
Absolutely.
obviously for later when we actually talk about the 53-man roster. What we want to start off with as kind of the first topic of the evening. So, as we all know, CD Lamb has now been extended by the Dallas Cowboys to a 4-year contract worth, I forget exactly how much,
Oh, it's a lot.
but yeah, yeah, it's
He's
quite a
the
lot.
second highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. Believe
That's
it's the
amazing.
highest paid is Justin Jefferson. I think it's $36 million a year. And then CD Lamb is about $2 million shy of that. So like
Yeah, there it
36
is.
and 34, something like that.
4-year, $136 million contract extension. So all of our agendas that eventually had CD Lamb to the Buffalo Bills have all been shot dead as of today. So now we have to basically pivot. And we would have asked Ben this, but unfortunately he's not with us. He's not feeling well. So, Paul, I'll bring the question up to you instead.
Sure.
What does the deal that CD Lamb received from the Dallas Cowboys mean for a potential Jamar Chase or Brandon Ayuk extension? Because we all know Brandon Ayuk is still trying to get extended by the San Francisco 49ers and get paid. And now he just watched CD Lamb get paid.
Hmm.
So, what do you think that means for both of them?
I'm going to start with this, then I'll go into Ayuk and Chase in just a second. The first thing that came to my mind when CD signed this contract was what's next for Dak and Micah Parsons? Dak Prescott is due some money soon. So after this season, he's a free agent in 2025. So he's due some money. How much money is he going to get? And if he doesn't like the contract that is offered by the Dallas Cowboys, does CD Lamb's huge contract become a problem then? Because he doesn't have a quarterback throwing to him. Because if Dak Prescott isn't throwing him the football, it's going to be Trey Lance possibly, who just had 5 interceptions in the preseason finale for Dallas against the Chargers. So that's not the route that CD wants. Micah Parsons, who is the big thing, next big thing to like Aaron Donald and Lawrence Taylor, those types of dudes, he's going to need a paycheck soon. So
Let's not
what does
compare
this?
him to LT. Thank you very much.
He's pretty good, Micah
He's
Parsons.
good, but let's not get on that kind of roll with Micah Parsons just yet. Specifically because I feel like TJ Watt and Myles Garrett are both better than him. But exactly, you're right. I mean, one of them is going to be gone because I feel like they made it work all
Hmm.
for CD. And I feel like it probably, if they were going to pay CD, then I feel like they're probably going to also want to pay Dak. So that
Yeah,
means they're going to probably wind up losing Micah Parsons. So, first
that
of all,
just means
Bill.
Brian.
Second of all, uh, I don't really know what we'll see. Who knows what Jerry Jones is thinking because Jerry Jones is, Jerry Jones and he's going to do what he wants. But like I said with the original question, now that we've seen this happen with CD Lamb, do you think Brandon Ayuk is now going to start demanding even more money for his services from San Francisco or now from anybody else that may want him?
He's obviously going to ask for that amount of money, you know, that or a similar type of deal of CD Lamb. That's why I think that Ayuk and Chase holdouts most likely will continue until they get a similar deal. I don't think Brandon Ayuk is going to step onto the field until we get this similar type deal from John Lynch and the 49ers. I don't think he steps on the field for any team, Ayuk, if he gets traded. Because if Ayuk gets traded, he's getting the payday. If
Hmm.
he stays with the 49ers, he isn't stepping on the field until he gets a CD Lamb type deal. And then there goes Debo Samuel because they still have to pay George Kittle, Brock Purdy, Kyle Juszczyk, uh, their top cornerback on defense.
Oh yeah,
So
let's totally pay Brock Purdy. Let's pay this guy. Let's pay this system quarterback a whole lot of money. But not the
So
point.
they got deals to do. So if you sign Ayuk, Debo has to go, right? He's the odd man out in this situation. Maybe it's not this season, you know, during the season, but maybe it's postseason. It's a postseason deal because they need the cap space.
Yeah, yeah. So I would agree to that. I can actually very well see it. I definitely think that, if they do pay Ayuk that much money, they're going to go bankrupt pretty much when it comes to cap. So I feel like they'll have to make some definite decisions. But now that we've discussed Ayuk, what about Jamar Chase? Because, he's also trying to get paid. Uh, T. Higgins, I believe he's still with Cincinnati. Am I right? Or did he leave?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so
Right.
he's still there, but I know he wants to get paid himself, and, I mean, there's still a lot of talk in Cincinnati about, all of their players that need to get paid as well. So, Jamar Chase and I mean, it's gonna be tough, I mean, because they gotta pay Jamar Chase.
They got to.
He is absolutely the main he's Joe Burrow's primary target, so you've gotta pay him what he wants and keep him over in Cincinnati. Because what if somebody else wants to pay him, even more than that? He goes to another team, heaven forbid. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying I want it to
Mhm.
happen, but hypothetically, what if he goes over to the Bills and has Josh Allen throw it to him? Oh my god. I mean, they're gonna regret that decision on letting him go. So, at the end of the day, they got to pay Jamar Chase. But
They
now with
got
all
it.
these wide receiver contracts going sky high, can they really afford to do it? Especially after what we just saw with CD Lamb.
It's going to be who they value more. It's, is it T. Higgins or is it Jamar Chase? And I think the obvious answer is Jamar Chase. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
they bring two different styles of play, but Jamar Chase is the obvious answer. You know, the chemistry between Burrow and Chase is unmatched. Is just unmatchable right now. So that's your offense right there. It's chasing Burrow. You can't just let your top wide receiver go. Is T. Higgins a great number two to have? Yes, but his previous deal was just right around 21 million. So you're thinking that's at least, if you look at market value, his market value is right around 19 million. T. Higgins almost 20. So you can't pay Chase 25 and Higgins 20 per season and still have money left over to build around.
Mhm.
One of the two is getting a massive payday, and it's going to be Jamar Chase. When it
See,
happens is
mhm.
still to be determined.
Yep. See, this is exactly I referenced this the other night, but the the key to winning Super Bowls is you have to have a solid team. If you've got one guy taking up all your cap space and you can't afford to build around your best players, you're not going to win anything. I mean, that's just how it is. So the fact of the matter is that they've got to play it smart with extensions and they've got to play it smart with the cap space. I mean, if you want a good case in point, look at how little Josh Allen is making compared to
Yeah.
everybody else in the quarterback market. And look
Mm-hmm.
at just how much cap space the Bills are about to have once
Yeah.
the Diggs contract comes off the books in 25. I mean, we're going to have a lot of money. And could you afford to give Josh Allen a better payday next season? Oh, absolutely. But the question
Absolutely.
is do you want to? I mean, obviously, yes, we love Josh Allen and we want Josh Allen to get paid, but it's the same exact conversation that we were just having. You know, you got to play it smart with the cap space. And seeing all these deals for these quarterbacks, it would fall in the same category. So hopefully Josh would be like, you know what, maybe I'll take a little bit of a pay raise, but not much, just to keep the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the cap saved up for the wide receivers, running backs, Dalton Kincaid, and anybody else that wants to get paid. But I believe there was a second topic too before we get into the meat of the show, which is the 53-man roster for the Bills.
It is.
Yeah,
It goes to
you
the
saved this one for me.
I did. The interesting rumors realms around New England and their starting quarterback situation.
Oh,
It's
geez.
a three-man race. Brissett, May, and Milton. Who wins the job?
Well, considering that Jacoby Brissett got injured in last night's game against the Commanders, I believe it was a shoulder injury. I haven't heard anything else on whether he's how bad it is or how minor it is. I haven't really heard anything about it. But uh if he's injured and is questionable to start week 1, I feel like they will indeed start Drake May after his pretty good performance last night. I think that they'll most likely roll with Drake May. I really don't think they're going to roll with Joe Milton. Like, no way. But um, I definitely, I wouldn't be surprised if they may start with Drake May and then transition over to Jacoby Brissett if Drake May has some bad games. And obviously, and this is something I can't stress enough, it's preseason.
Hmm.
W-
Right.
Players are going to play differently in the real game setting compared to preseason. And that's something that we'll get into more when we actually talk about the 53-man rosters for the Bills. and kind of my own thoughts behind, who I would keep and who I would cut. But back to the original question, they'll probably start Drake May if Jacoby's injury is not serious. But looking at their schedule, uh, I don't really know exactly how I'd feel starting Drake May right off the bat. Your
Mhm.
first game is against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. That's rough.
Yeah.
Then you go back home. Sure, you're going back home, but you're still playing the Seattle Seahawks. They're no slouch of a team. And then you have to go right back on the road to face Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. And then you have to stay on the road all the way to Santa Clara to play the 49ers. That is a trial by fire for a rookie quarterback. So if Drake
I mean,
May,
you just continue down their schedule, and then it's,
oh, it's
after the
bad.
49ers, it's Dolphins, Texans,
Oh,
Jags,
yeah, it's
Jets.
bad.
I wouldn't say that if you're gonna start Jacoby Brissett, because based off the schedule, and you don't want a rookie quarterback to lose its confidence early on in that season. I mean, just look at just an example recently, Justin Fields. He
Oh,
wasn't
God.
he wasn't I wouldn't say he was NFL ready when the Bears wanted him to start. But the problem was the Bears didn't really have anyone that was good enough to maybe make make them 3-4 after the first 7 games to give the Justin Fields a chance to take the team to the playoffs. But here is the Patriots. You look at their first 8 games. If Jacoby Brissett can get them to 4-4 after their first 8 games, and then you're like, okay, now we want to start seeing the rookie play a little bit. Week 9, I think it's a perfect time to start Drake May. It's the first game in November. It's on the road to the Titans, but
Hmm.
the Titans at that point, they could be 1-8, means or 1-7. They could also
I
be fighting
wish.
for a playoff spot. So that could be an interesting week 9 game. And then they play the following week against the Bears. So I think that's a perfect 2-game stretch. Even though they're both on the road, that's a perfect 2-game stretch to introduce Drake May to regular season NFL football.
It
And
really is.
it seems to this point that Jared Mayo trusts Jacoby Brissett just a little bit more than he does in Drake May. He doesn't really like. I just pulled up an article on Patriots Wire, and it has a quote that Mayo doesn't like the undisciplined football that Drake May perform, plays. So if you look at that from that standpoint, and he's still playing undisciplined football, even though he went 13 of 20 last night against the Commanders, the first 9 games of the season, the first 8 games of the season, isn't isn't a good spot to play Drake May if they still have the undisciplined concerns with how Drake May plays.
Hmm. It'll be interesting to watch because I know us as Bills fans, we really, really, really hope that Drake May is not him, but who knows? He looked really good in the first preseason game, but it's not going to be a good stretch if you start him immediately. I
Right.
definitely wouldn't want to start Drake May immediately. So I think what we're going to have to do now is, you know, they'll have to start Jacoby if he's healthy, just because, he's a veteran quarterback. He could at least maybe keep the Patriots competitive against the Jets. I don't think so, but I don't really know. You know, the Patriots are a team that genuinely I feel like could very well end up with the number one overall pick this year,
Hmm.
by being that bad, maybe a 3-4 win team at best. But um, I feel like to answer the question in full, though, they'll start Jacoby if he's healthy. If he's not, they'll start Drake May. I really don't think they're going to start Joe Milton at all. I don't even know if they'll keep him on the roster, but we'll find out tomorrow.
We'll find that out tomorrow, and we'll also find out who the Bills keep on their 53-man roster at 4 o'clock tomorrow. We're going to skip trivia for this week, save it for next week, and go right into Bills topics today. Preseason's over. We'll do our general takeaways of the preseason in just a moment, and then we'll head right into the 53-man roster rundown, where we're going to go through different position groupings. How many receivers do the Bills want to keep on the roster? Is it 5? Like Greg thinks? Greg thinks it's about 5. Do they keep 6? Or do they be ambitious enough and keep 7 wide receivers, because there's a lot of good wide receivers the Bills have on their squad, and if they don't want one to be picked up, do they maybe go ambitious and go 7? But first, what were your overall off-season slash preseason takeaways?
Well, I tried to tell people a long, long, long time before the preseason started that we needed somebody that was not Mitch Trubisky to be the backup to Josh Allen, and they still decide Mitch Trubisky, and now he's questionable for week 1. So now you have Ben DiNucci as what's looking like going to be QB2 to be stashed on the practice squad and elevated, for game day. So the Bills have a
Yeah.
very, very questionable decision to make when it comes to how many quarterbacks do you actually stash on the 53, aside from, well, Josh Allen. It's like, oh yeah, we're all gonna,
Oh
let's
my.
just say the rumors that Josh Allen is officially making the 53-man roster are big if true. But I actually think that the real question marks are in the running back position. Who
Hmm.
do you keep? Do you keep Ty Johnson, or do
Maybe.
you do you keep Frank Gore? That is the question. I know I just went full. I think, yeah, that's a Shakespeare line. To be or not to be. That is the question. But either way, I personally am leaning more towards keeping Ty Johnson just for his
Hmm.
familiarity with the Bills and scheme, even though I would absolutely hate to lose Frank Gore Jr. I just don't know at this
Absolutely.
point who you could sufficiently get rid of to keep Frank Gore Jr. on the roster. Like, who are you basically having to sacrifice? Because you can't sacrifice a guy like Quentin Morris.
Hmm.
You can't sacrifice, actually, this was a talk I had a few days ago. You can't sacrifice Reggie Gilliam to
You
keep.
cannot. No.
Yeah, you can't do that. I had seen some people talking about how they would have rather cut Reggie Gilliam to keep Frank Gore Jr., and I'm just like, no. First of
You
all,
can't do that.
Reggie Gilliam is a big guy, right? I think he's like
He is.
6'1". Frank Gore Jr. is not that big. The fact that
Frank
the
Gore's
Bills,
tiny.
mhm, the
He's
fact
a
that the Bills
undersized
use,
back.
yep, the fact that the Bills use Reggie Gilliam and the fullback position and as a tight end in blocking sets, there's no way that you're going to get Frank Gore Jr. to do that. So I would have much rather kept Reggie Gilliam and cut Frank Gore Jr. as much as I'm going to hate it because he's not going to make it past waivers. But
You don't think so? You don't.
no,
You cut Frank Gore Jr. You don't. You think that he will get claimed by somebody?
I think somebody's going to be enamored by his tape enough to want to try claiming him. Now, I know that, obviously name recognition isn't going to be that big of a thing because if name recognition was a thing, he would have been drafted a lot higher than he was. But
He wasn't
I
even
just,
drafted. He was an
like,
undrafted
in the
free
sixth,
agent.
was he? I thought he went in like the 6th or 7th round.
No, he was an undrafted free agent.
Right. See, that just proves my point. Name recognition is one thing, but it's not going to get this guy, it's not going to be the main thing that gets Frank Gore Jr. on somebody's practice squad
Right.
off the waivers. What's going to get him on somebody's practice squad is what he was able to do in the preseason. And he had some
Hmm.
really good games. The game against Carolina really was the Frank Gore Jr. game. Just like how the
It
game against
was.
Pittsburgh was the Joe Andreessen game, we had a few different show outs against Carolina, and Frank Gore Jr. was the show out.
He
So,
was.
that's what's going to really hurt about having to cut him. You'd like to keep him, but uh, I just don't know who you'd replace him with. Didn't you have a draft of a 53-man roster, Paul?
I
That
do.
we
I
let's
have
see
I
it.
have I have my 53-man roster right over with me. I actually shared my screen
Go for it.
just
Let's
to
see what we
show,
got here.
because this is an interesting roster. I think it's also very realistic to what very realistic out here. I'll even zoom in just a little bit so we
I'm
can see
blind.
it
I can't
better.
see it.
All right, that should
Yeah,
be
Paul,
better.
I'm
Is it
blind. I
better?
can't see.
Is that better or is
A
that
little
worse?
bit. A
All
little
right,
bit. Make it a little better. Make it a little bigger.
there we go.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so all right, let's see. Oh, so you're keeping Frank Gore Jr. You're going with James Cook, Ray Davis, and Frank Gore Jr. Okay.
I'll
I'm
give
kind
you
of
the
intrigued to hear.
explanation on Frank Gore Jr.
All
because
right.
when I'm looking at the running back room, you're gonna here's the risk with keeping Frank Gore Jr. because it's either going to be Frank Gore Jr. or it's going to be Ty Johnson. You let go of Ty Johnson, I think it opens up a roster spot for KJ Hamler because he's going to be your return person. He's going to be your
Mhm.
kickoff return guy, and Daquan Hardy, that's right down there, under the corners is going to be your punt return guy. So there's your return team, Hamler and Hardy. So you don't have to worry about losing Ty Johnson to the return game because Hamler and Hardy can both do that, and that's what is going to earn Daquan Hardy a roster spot, including is that he could play the special teams and he showed that he can adjust and make corrections. The first two games of the preseason, we uh, I was very skeptical on how Daquan Hardy's judgment was on punt returns. There was a lot of punt returns you kind of scratch your head. It's like, why don't you just allow that to the end zone, or just let that thing bounce? There was a kickoff on Sunday's game where he allowed the kick to go out of bounds, and to he was prepared in it by he stepped out of bounds and 1 foot was in bounds. He was ready for the kick to go out of bounds, so the Bills can get the ball at the 40. So that's the type of adjustments you wanted to see out of Daquan Hardy heading into the final preseason game, and he did that. The Bills also tested Hardy on the outside. They allowed him to play outside corner, and he held his ground well. So Daquan Hardy, for those reasons, make the roster. So there's one part of your receiving game completed. If you don't want Ty Johnson, KJ Hamler can do it. But I also think KJ Hamler has an upper hand on some of these other wide receivers, is because he just brings an element that the Bills don't have. Frank Gore Jr. went
Okay.
down with the knee injury, and he's going to be okay, according to him. After the game, he said, just a little tweak, he should be okay. So I don't think the injury would keep Frank Gore off the roster. KJ Hamler was the running back for the final 3 plays of that game, and he scored a touchdown, and that brought the game to 31-26. So Hamler, even though he's a wide receiver, you could just plug and play with him in any spot on this roster. He's kind of, you could say he's a more experienced Isaiah McKenzie. He could do everything that Isaiah McKenzie did for the Bills, plus some. Like, Isaiah McKenzie couldn't line up in the backfield and carry the football. Like, Hamler was the halfback, and he carried the football, and he averaged 5 yards a carry. That's why KJ Hamler, I think,
Hmm.
has an edge, maybe over a guy like a Tyrell Shavers who performed really, really good from training camp to preseason.
Okay. Okay. Interesting thought. Interesting point of view to process all of this information from. I am also intrigued at a very popular name that is missing off of your 53-man roster, and that is
Mhm,
tight end Zach Davidson. What was
mhm.
your thought process on keeping him off of the final 53-man roster?
He just didn't have the preseason I was hoping for him to have. You know, Quentin Morris and Zach Davison looked exactly the same in preseason. I think Zach Davidson had a better training camp, but he didn't bring that to preseason football, even though that he had a good final preseason game, but I didn't see enough of him in preseason game number 2 or preseason game number 1 that says, "Ooh, this is why he should make the roster." I think there's a legit argument for Zach Davison to make the roster, and there's a legit reason why Quentin Morris makes the roster. There's similar players, but Quentin Morris, I think, with the experience that he brings, gives him the edge over Zach Davidson. And I think Zach Davidson, because he didn't have an ooh-ah preseason, that's why he would be practice squad safe. I don't think he will be picked up by anyone.
Okay, so a point to that. You actually brought up a good point. So I've seen teams do this in the past, and I feel like that's exactly what they're doing with Zach Davidson. He did not get a lot of time in any preseason game, if you
That is
recall.
true.
I think what the Bills are trying to do, I think they saw a lot of potential from Zach Davidson in training camp that they want to basically hide him from other teams so that Bills could stash him on the practice squad. And because nobody really has any tape on him and they don't really know exactly what he's capable of, he's going to go right through the waiver list to be claimed by the Bills right all over again.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I feel like the team's thought process is on Zach Davidson. And that's exactly why I don't think he's going to make the final 53 either. I think they're going to basically they're going to keep Quentin Morris and they're going to try and pray that Zach Davidson makes it all the way through waivers and lands on the 53-man roster or lands on the practice squad, I mean,
Mhm.
because he has a lot of potential. And I think they just didn't want him to flash all that potential just so they can have, an option to keep him just on the practice squad. Because you got to admit, with how good he looked at camp, and he did have some good moments in the preseason, sure.
Mhm.
He didn't get much playing time for the reason that I stated. Probably the reason that I stated. I have no idea what they were actually thinking with him. But in a hypothetical, say he's on the practice squad and you have another injury to Knox or you have an injury to Kincaid and you need to call him up and he all of a sudden flashes this top tier tight end talent that the Bills knew he had, but that no one else knew he had because the Bills hid him from everybody else. Yeah, we're going to look awful smart for that one. Chess, not checkers, in the case of a hypothetical situation. Obviously, we want Knox and Kincaid to both have healthy seasons, especially me. I just drafted Dalton Kincaid in fantasy. I need this man to stay healthy. I had horrible luck last year with tight ends, so I hope me drafting Dalton Kincaid for good luck is not a curse. If it is, you can come slap me later, Paul. But anyway, I like the idea as well of keeping Cedric Van Pran Granger as the backup center to Connor McGovern. Um, I also see you actually kept Lyle Collins on the roster. I
Mhm.
am curious to hear why. I have been hearing that he actually could be cut.
And if the Bills decide to cut him and go a different route at left guard, I mean, I wouldn't say it would be a surprise if Lyle Collins doesn't make the Bills roster. I mean,
Mhm.
I think he's probably 52 or 53. He's the last few guys that the Bills say, okay, there's two spots to fill, and we might need an extra offensive lineman. Okay, Lyle Collins might be that guy because what Lyle Collins can do, he brings NFL experience, but he could play right guard, he could play left guard, and he could play left tackle.
Mhm.
He's your plug and play offensive lineman. He's the Ryan Bates of this team. And Ryan Bates is no longer here. So okay, Lyle Collins. Okay, Osiris Torrance goes down. Just perhaps that he goes down one game and they don't have a starting right guard for the game. Let's say on a week 3, like Cyrus Torrance' ankle isn't feeling too right, so they decide not to play him. Okay, Lyle Collins can fit right into Osiris Torrance role. Is he going to be Osiris Torrance? No, but he's going to be serviceable enough to where, okay, we can survive one game and Osiris Torrance comes back. Same thing with Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins. If, a game or two they go down with the injury, Niall Collins is serviceable enough to replace them. And he knows each position well enough as he knows left guard, and he just plugs and play everywhere. I don't know if he knows center, but he can definitely play right guard, right tackle, and left tackle, as well
And
as he could play
mhm,
left guard.
perfect. Yeah, see, that's what you love about versatile linemen. It's a plug and play situation that, you're actually really thankful for at the end of the day if enough injuries occur. Like, look at what happened to the Miami Dolphins literally last year with the slew of injuries that hit their offensive line. Connor Williams out for the year with a torn ACL. They had to shift Liam Eichenberg off of his preferred position at left guard over to center, and it was a disaster. Then I believe he actually got hurt, so they had to start the third string center. It's just a wild sequence when you consider, you know, what can happen with enough injuries. So it's actually better in my mind to have more versatile offensive linemen than to have less linemen at all. So I actually kind of I like that you've got 3 left tackles making the roster. Your right guards, I definitely don't have any issues with. The only one that I know it won't probably happen, but Keaton Bills probably won't make the roster, the
He
final
probably won't.
53.
He'll probably be a
So
practice squad guy.
I would love to at least have him on the practice squad. That way you've got a guy just in case. Yeah, he's left guard. So there's really, I mean, do they really think that maybe he could potentially back up David Edwards? Or I don't know, because Lyle Collins, I had heard, did not look good in camp at all. Or he didn't really look
Yeah, he
good in
wasn't.
the
He looked
he
good.
didn't look good in the preseason.
I don't know what you would say that Lyle Collins, off season with the Buffalo Bills was. It was okay. We'll put it that way. It was okay. He didn't look like the old Lyle Collins, but he didn't also look like last year's Lyle Collins. He just looked
Mhm,
okay. He is a little he the age is probably showing just a little bit, but I think, having a versatile offensive lineman is important to your offensive line. It fills the old Ryan Bates role, and I don't think Lyle Collins is going to start many games. He's just there, one, for veteran leadership, and two, be that plug and play guy if one offensive lineman goes down for a
mhm,
game or two. And could you possibly stash him on your practice squad? Yeah, but he's probably going to get picked up.
mhm.
I would assume he probably would get picked up.
Unless his
You
play
know,
was that bad that you just
right.
can't look that you just look at him and go, "Yeah, no, you couldn't do this." If it was that bad, then I could see a world where they decide to not even pick up Lyle Collins at all, and he actually hits free agency.
That could
And
possibly it be because
then he
that's where he
probably would
was.
come back. Exactly. I mean, they waited a long time to sign Lyle Collins. The old team that I thought would actually sign him in Miami did not sign him, and I don't think they'd be interested anymore, even with the shaky state of their current offensive line. So I I don't know. I think that one's going to be one to watch as we get into the roster trim down. Let's see. I can't think of. Oh yeah, I do want to know. You went with 6 wide receivers.
I did.
I want to know, aside from the obvious 4, Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, and Matt Collins. I just want to hear the idea on why you still kept KJ Hamler and you still kept MVS. Now, I can understand MVS. You know, what we're paying MVS, if you cut him at this point, you're throwing money down the drain. So
Mhm.
I can't see a world where they cut MVS unless they really think that he's, not what he once was, or if the injury he suffered is going to keep him out for an extended period. Because then, if you didn't have six wide receivers on your active roster, if you ran with five, I think that's what Greg said, right? Five wide receivers.
Yeah, right around, yeah, 5, yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you had five, if you didn't have MVS and you kept KJ Hamler or even Andy Isabella,
Mhm.
then you'd have a practice or you'd have a 53-man spot open to keep a guy like Zach Davidson or Frank Gore Jr. Uh, that's just the way that I had seen it at first. Personally, when I looked over this in the little time I had today while I was out and about, um, that's kind of how I would have gone. I would have wanted to go probably five receivers, and the fifth receiver that I would have kept was MVS. So I also had seen a tweet from Cover One earlier today in the brief time I was able to actually look at Twitter. There is a strategy that you could actually keep one quarterback, just Josh Allen on the full 53-man roster.
Mhm.
And that's because of the whole three emergency quarterback rule that went into play not too long ago. So um, what I believe they had said was you have one of them on the practice squad, like Ben DiNucci, that gets elevated because Shane Buechele's on IR. So you
Mhm.
can't do anything with him for I think it's 4 games. I don't know if they
Yep.
added any. Okay, so it's the same as it always was. So Shane Buechele's on IR, can't be activated for 4 games. But once he's off IR, if he's still okay, then you can activate him, and you've already got your backup. You still have Ben DiNucci, and you just keep elevating him because I think you can elevate a player 3 times from the practice squad to the main active roster,
Yes.
on game day. So that's what you keep doing. You have one of Ben DiNucci or Mitch Trubisky on the practice squad due to Mitch Trubisky's injury. Now, I know that, you know, I'm actually curious. You don't even have him on your roster at all. Did you just cut Mitch and go with Ben DiNucci as QB2? Or did you have a idea where maybe you keep Ben DiNucci or where you keep Mitch Trubisky on the practice squad, provided he doesn't get claimed on waivers?
I don't know the severity of Mitch Trubisky's injury. So, could they possibly stash Mitch Trubisky on IR and have him out for 4 games? Because it seems like it could be a 2 to 4 week injury, but it could also be a little bit more. So, do you, instead of taking the risk with one quarterback and then just calling up and down and between, Danucci and Brown, you probably alternate every week, and then what if he's out 8 weeks? Just say, let's say Mitch Trubisky's out for the first 8 weeks of the season. The practice squad call ups for Brown and Danucci just run out.
Hmm.
You only have 6 games worth of that. So if you know Mitch Trubisky is going to be out more than 4 weeks or more than 6 weeks, throw him onto your IR. Have Ben DiNucci or Anthony Brown Jr. make the roster, and then once Mitch Trubisky comes back, and you feel like he's still going to be a good enough backup for you, then you cut whoever your quarterback two is. Mitch Trubisky falls back into place at QB2, and that's it. Ben DiNucci, goes to the practice squad, or he gets cut, and Anthony Brown Jr. sits on your practice squad.
Hmm.
That's kind of my thinking of it. You know, I don't feel 100% comfortable with one quarterback sitting on your roster and just alternating practice squad designations between
Yeah,
your
it's a bit of a
quarterback too.
yeah, and I thought the same thing when I saw the initial tweet. It's a very risky play
It
because
is.
you will run out of practice squad call-ups for the specific quarterbacks. And if you run out and you don't have one that you could call up, you're in a little bit of a pickle. But I
Right.
do want to
Josh
I want to
Allen either goes in the game with one quarterback or you have to spend money to get another quarterback. And I don't want to spend a third contract. Well, at this point would be a fourth contract
Mhm.
on quarterback too. Would rather save some of that money just in case, God forbid, Dorian Williams goes down or Terrell Bernard goes down or even,
Don't you
Mac
dare put
Hollins
that into
goes
the
down.
universe. Okay, you can put
Like,
that in the
just,
universe.
God forbid somebody goes down and you need, the extra money to go out and go spend maybe $3-4 million on a serviceable backup. Okay, that's fine. But I'm not going to go spend, 1.5 million on another quarterback two contract. It's either you have a quarterback two on your roster and you IR somebody, that the IR designation would go to Mitch Trubisky because he is currently hurt and
Ah,
lingering an
jeez.
injury. So you just throw him there for 4 weeks. If he's good to come back after 4 weeks, it goes down to Danucci or Brown making your practice squad. I think it's simple as that. And there's no need for the entire hassle of practice squad
Okay,
designations and that whole headache. But
okay,
for wide
Paul.
receivers,
Paul, hang on just a second. I want to reference this tweet by Thydoc. So he saw Mitch walking at the preseason game against the Panthers on Saturday with a little bit of a limp. I'm just going to basically read it from his tweet that he had referenced about Trubisky when he quote tweeted Sal. So MCLs do heal fast, but tracking like a 4 to 6 weeks versus 2 to 4 weeks, in his opinion, might need to be scratched first 1 to 2 weeks. Place Danucci or Brown on practice squad and call up as needed. So I liked what Thydoc suggested more than what I had seen from other sources. I personally definitely would have agreed. You're going to have to stash one of those quarterbacks on the practice squad.
mhm,
So
absolutely.
I think that maybe you going back to your roster as well, Paul, because you actually had Ben DiNucci on the 53 itself. Maybe what you can do is you stash because the Bills have already released Anthony Brown. So
Oh, that is true. I totally forgot about that.
yeah,
So
the Bills
the entire
released
Anthony
Anthony Brown
Brown
yesterday.
situation is so he's going to be on your practice squad,
Yeah.
Danucci. If
So don't forget they released Anthony Brown, they released wide receiver Demir Bird, they released Kevin Jarvis, defensive end Rondell Bothroyd, I think. I don't know how to say that name. Linebacker Shane Simon, linebacker Deion Jones. That one was amazing when I first heard about it. I was like, okay, wait, you're getting rid of you're releasing Deion Jones, which we'll get to that in a
now
second.
it,
Pull your roster back up.
yeah, I'll pull it up.
I didn't even get to the main point of what I wanted to say about your roster. So pull it back up. And then they released cornerback Kyron Brown and put both safety Terrell Burgess and D Delaney on IR. So what I wanted to say and what I'm going to say now that you got the roster back up is when I saw yesterday that they actually released. Why did that happen? I hate it when that happens, when my brain blanks like that after a literal second. Okay, so when they released Deion Jones,
Hmm.
my mind immediately went, "Wait, you're releasing
Hmm.
Deion Jones? What?" So that
Yep,
officially means, and you have him on your roster, Joe Andreessen makes the 53, and
he
that
does.
would be everybody's dream come true, especially mine. I have been dying to keep that man on the practice squad, or at least on the practice squad, if not on the 53-man roster itself, because what I said earlier about the practice squad with Andreessen, I do not see a world after the game he had against Pittsburgh and the follow-up game he had against Carolina that he doesn't get claimed on waivers.
Oh,
If
he's
you let if
absolutely
you
going to
let
get
Joe
claimed.
Andre Okay. So for reference, give me one moment here. Let me pull up
You
the
know,
waiver wire order so I can ensure that I've got it all set in stone here, but it
before you
should
go in
be
the waiver wire order in a second, what Joe Andreessen kind of reminds me of is Isaiah Hodgins. He had a really, really good, you know, training camp. He had a really good first three preseason games, and then there was just not enough for him to keep Isaiah Hodgins on the Bills roster, and everyone knew if you released Isaiah Hodgins, he was going to get claimed. Like it was 100% a fact. Hodgins was going to get claimed, and he was with the Giants, and he had a pretty decent year with the New York Giants. You
mhm,
let go of Joe Andreessen, I'm 90% sure Joe Andreessen does not return to Buffalo Joe. He doesn't. He doesn't return. I'm 90% sure that's the case with Joe Andreessen. And it really just comes down to who the Bills really want. Balin
mhm,
Spector or Joe Andreessen. That's literally
exactly,
the pecking order with with the linebacker. You know, Balin Spector here, you know, I really didn't hear Balin Spector's name a lot in the preseason.
I
We
didn't
know
either.
what Balin Spector can bring. He could
Mhm,
play the same position as Andreessen, and they both can play special teams. But
mhm,
Spector has injury issues and availability issues. So it's going to come down to that. Who's going to be more available, Andreessen or Spector? And I think Andreessen out of the two is going to be more available than Spector. Andreessen, 12 tackles against Pittsburgh, and then he had a decent day against, the Panthers, and that was the Andreessen I was expecting. I was not expecting 15 tackles from Joe Andreessen in the final preseason game. All I wanted to see was some consistency. He brought some consistency. There was one uh-oh play where he kind of let one guy escape, but I don't know if that was a safety, a safety miscommunication, or it was completely Joe Andreessen's fault. That's kind of like one of those in between linebacker
mhm,
safety type things.
yep,
I think
I know
Joe
exactly what you're
Andreessen.
referencing.
I think Joe Andreessen makes this team. I'm 85% sure. You know,
You know what?
I
I
was
just remembered something. I just remembered something very interesting. You know how we were talking about quarterbacks earlier?
we were.
Hear me out. Hear me out. This is gonna be my little, wild take for the night because I have to fill a quota, okay? The Philadelphia
Yes,
Eagles released Will Grier yesterday.
we
Hear
did. We
me
did.
out. Hear me out that we bring in Will Grier to the practice squad and absolutely get rid of, Mitch Trubisky, period. You have Will Grier, you have Ben DiNucci, and you have Shea Buechele on IR. You have one of them as the backup to Josh Allen, probably maybe Will Grier, and you have the other
Maybe.
one stashed on the squad until Shea Buechele comes back. Hear me out. I know it's kind of wild. I know it's Will Grier, and he got released for a reason, but I don't know. Anything is. I mean, there's plenty of interesting things you can make when it comes to
You have
quarterbacks.
the agenda to fill.
I
So
do have one wild take to fill every time we come on this show. So I had to fill it right there with a Will Grier to the Bills as QB2 take, which
I
we wouldn't have to worry about this at all if we would have just done two things.
he hasn't
One,
played an ounce of
signed
football.
signed Jameis Winston when he was available. He didn't sign with the Browns for that much money, and having Jameis Winston on this team would have been an instant culture impact in a good way because I've said it all along on this show that a good culture wins games because it brings the locker room together when the times get really, really hard. Like you
I'm
saw when the
going to
Bills went,
disagree with you on Will Greer. Mm-mm,
y- well, you're supposed to disagree. That was a wild take that I didn't fully commit
mm-mm.
to. So you can definitely, you know what it's showing? It's showing just how much I dislike Mitch Trubisky. Okay, that's
And that's
exactly
what
what
it's
you're seeing.
showing. It's just filling your agenda.
My I can't stand this guy agenda. Exactly. I never have been able to. I still remember the night he went number 2 overall to the Bears. I laughed so hard that I thought I was going to keel over. right? And that was all them years ago when he went number 2 overall. I was like, "Are y'all for real? Are the Bears for real?" So, I still
Yeah.
can't believe that they did that, and I still hate that he came back. I mean, I get why they probably brought him back. He has familiarity with the system because he was with the Bills as Josh Allen's backup for all those years. So I get it, but doesn't mean I have to like it. When you could have
Right.
had Jameis Winston, who, if for whatever reason you had to start the QB2 and it was Jameis Winston, I'd feel a little more comfortable with Jameis Winston than with Mitch Trubisky.
I would agree
But
with that. Here's the thing with QB2 before we head into our final two topics of the night. I'm gonna take down my roster here. Here's the thing with QB2. I'm not confident in Mitch Trubisky. If this was, we're about to talk Tyler Bass in a second. If this was Mitch Trubisky of maybe 2 seasons ago when he was with Buffalo, yeah, fine. I'm perfectly okay with it. He looked good in the, training camp. He looked good in the preseason. I'm okay with that. If Josh Allen, God forbid, had to miss one game or 2 games due to an injury, I would have been fine with that. Now, Trubisky 2 years later, not so sure. You know,
I
I'm
tried to
not
tell
sure
y'all.
he's would be able to run the full offense, that Joe Brady has.
I
Mitch
tried to
Trubisky, I
tell
believe,
y'all.
was in I think was it a Brian Dable offense or was it a Ken Dorsey offense? It was a Ken
Uh,
Dorsey offense.
yeah, it was a Ken Dorsey offense. The
It was a
year that
Ken
he was
Dorsey offense, so it was probably simpler for QB2 to read because it
wait,
was predictable.
wait, 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 wait,
Or
wait,
was it?
wait. Wait, hold on, hold on.
Trying to think if it
I
was a
did
Dable or
no, no, no. That
Dorsey.
it was Dorsey, right? Because
Mhm.
what years was he here? What years was
He wasn't
Trubisky the
here last
backup?
season. It
Okay,
was the
well,
year
last season
before. It
was
was
Ken Dorsey, and the year before that,
yeah.
I believe, was Brian Dable. But
Mhm.
that's also not what I had just thought of. He ran a Matt Canada offense, which is about as basic and simple as you could possibly get. So maybe, I don't know, maybe you look at the fact that Mitch Trubisky would have to run a Joe Brady offense and go, "Oh man, we're in trouble now," because his brain was so accustomed to Matt Canada's offense, his jet sweeps on third and shorts on critical situations, or it's fourth down, 4th and 2, or 4th and 1, and you yeet the ball 15 yards because why not? Like that was just the idiocy we saw out of Matt Canada last year. And let's not have to put Mitch Trubisky in a position where he's got to learn something complex because I feel like
Mhm.
that may be a little complex for Mitch Trubisky at this point. So um, that was the last bit I really had on Trubisky. I still don't like the fact that we signed him as QB2. I really wish it would have been Jameis Winston or in particular almost anybody, but it is what it is. He has familiarity with the Bills and I'm pretty sure is he one of Josh Allen's better friends? Because that's why Kyle Allen stayed
Trubisky?
for so long.
Yeah, I would believe they're pretty good friends. He was on the roster at
Mhm.
least once, so I would assume
Exactly.
they would have a good connection. You know, Kyle Allen was one of Josh Allen's I wouldn't say best friend because I don't know Josh Allen's, friends tier list. But,
You know how
you
amazing
know,
that would be if you did?
Josh Allen and Kyle Allen, they were pretty good friends. So, obviously Josh Allen would want, someone that he's comfortable with as his quarterback too. So they went Kyle Allen last year. And then they went back to Trubisky this year. Honestly, at the point where they signed Trubisky, they probably didn't want to spend money on Wentz or Winston, so they went to the third best
Don't
option they
remind
had
me.
on the board, and they thought it was Trubisky. But
God, that is not anybody's best
let's
option. But
really
yes,
quick.
you want
We
to
have
talk
two
about
more
Tyler
Bills
Bass.
topics. Let's make this one really quick because
Yeah,
I
you
really
want to
want
talk
to
about
spend
Tyler Bass.
I want to spend some time on Tyler Bass before we end the show. So, really quick, what is your biggest weakness on the Bills right now heading into what is the weakest part of the roster right now heading into roster cut down?
Safety, 100%. We had to
No,
stash
it's
two of
either
them on
safety or
IR.
linebacker. I think
It's
that's the
safety.
two. It's the
It's
safety. I'm
definitely
concerned
safety.
there too.
It's 100% safety. I mean, you're gonna have to start Taylor Rapp, and you're gonna have to start, yeah, Damar Hamlin, right? I'm pretty sure I'm
Yeah,
in the right. Yes, okay. Still somewhat learning position group the players in position groups to try to not get them confused with the cornerbacks, like I have a very bad habit of doing. So all I'm saying is that we're going to be forced to start Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin, and I'm not all for that. I kind of wish we would have given Justin Simmons a little bit more of a look before Atlanta jumped on him.
yeah, that is true.
But at the end of the day, if you don't, the Bills probably just didn't want to pay him, and I'm all for that. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah, true.
believe that the Bills should be making any big movements to make any kind of contracts, like any kind of mediocre, like middle of the road contracts. Just save the cap space for 2025 when Diggs' contract comes off the books and you have a ton of it to spend. Because then you could probably try to pry a guy like Jamar Chase or Brandon Ayuk away from their teams if they don't get
Hmm.
paid. But that's beside the point. You've got some beef with the guy I have the signed jersey of behind me, so let's hear it.
All right. This is going to be the question that's going to be unanswered until we actually act until games actually matter in about a week and a half. What is your confidence level with Tyler Bass this season? But there's more to this question that I want to get into is, confidence is varies. Does are you confident in Tyler Bass making a 35-yard kick on a random Sunday afternoon for the first points of the game? I would say yeah, but let's put this in a scenario where Tyler Bass was just a few months ago. The game's on the line, fourth quarter. The Bills have the ball with about I'm going to say with 5 seconds left in the fourth, the ball at the 32-yard line.
Don't
Makes it
put
a
this through me.
49-yard
Don't
kick.
put me through this again.
It's a 49-yard kick to win the football game. One two-part question. Do you believe Tyler Bass makes the kick? And what is your confidence level in
Well,
Tyler
first of all,
Bass this season?
I'm going to add a third part to your question. Are we not playing the Chiefs? Because if we're playing the Chiefs, it doesn't matter how much time you give Patrick Mahomes. He's going to run the ball down the field on you in 2 seconds flat to kick a field goal to tie the game. So let's go with the scenario we're not playing the Chiefs. And it's just, are you talking just a regular season game that you need to win?
Game's on the
Like,
line.
okay, game's on the line.
Just the game's on the line. Regular season, postseason. The game's on the line. This is an important kick. In the comments, it's like, well, what is the situation? It's like, and
Exactly.
my
That is
point
a
of
very
view is
valid point.
the situation doesn't matter. It's a game's on the line. You have to make the kick.
No,
Like
okay,
it doesn't
okay.
matter if you're 4-0
That's not
and
what I think
you're
the, commenters on your own tweet were trying to suggest. But what I think they were trying to suggest, it depends on where you're playing. Like, say you're in a dome, right? And this is coming from somebody who actually has a little bit of kicking experience in football. So, if you're in a dome, you don't have to worry about wind coming in from one side or the other. The only thing you really have to worry about is your own head and all the crowd yelling as you're trying to make the kick. So if say it's like the Lions and you're playing in Ford Field, I'd be a lot more confident in Tyler Bass to be able to make a 35-yard kick to win a game in that situation versus say if you were in a stadium like Pittsburgh, if you were in Heinz Field. Yes, I know it's Acrisure now. It's Heinz Field forever to an old Yinzer at heart. But in a stadium like that, especially if you're kicking towards the river, it's one of the hardest places to kick in the entire NFL.
it
You have
is.
to worry about wind coming at you from all sides. You have to hope that your holder holds the ball just the way you need it and that he doesn't, fumble the ball in his hands puts the ball down late, or even worse, puts the ball with laces out. Because
Mhm.
once your cleat hits that lace, you are not kicking that ball far at all, I promise. So
Yeah, that
it's a
is
very
absolutely true.
fluid, it's a question that you ask that has a lot of fluid answers. But
Mhm.
long story short, if it's a game like, as a matter of fact, let me go to the Bills schedule really quickly,
Let's
just to
put it
kind
week
of,
2.
okay, so
I
week
think
two,
that's
you're in
where
Miami,
you're in
and
Miami, 5 seconds, 4th quarter, game's on the line. It's a 49-yard kick. Does Tyler Bass make it?
it's a 49-yard kick. Um, I will say yes. I will say
Or is that
first
a
of all,
confident yes? Or are you saying, well, yes, because he has to make it, or is
that's a
it like,
multi-layered
oh,
it's a multi-layered yes. And this is again something that comes from just kind of knowing what it is to kick. So confidence levels in kickers are very finite. And
mhm.
what happened to him last year, that wide right to miss against the Chiefs, that would have in all likelihood sent the game to overtime, that probably destroyed his confidence. And when
Oh, yeah.
you have your confidence level shot as a kicker, it's really, really hard to get it back. Like you could be putting hours, with the trainer, with the special teams coach in the gym, and it's just really hard to bounce back for something like that. It's rough, I promise. So I think that's kind of what's going on with Tyler Bass. What you really need is just for somebody to restore his confidence. Once you restore his confidence, Tyler Bass will become automatic from anywhere. It seems. And I do have a bit of a this isn't, well, it's not personal. I mean, when I kicked, wasn't much, but I've seen this happen in the NFL before. When it happened to Chris Boswell, the current Steelers kicker in 2018. So that was the worst year of Boswell's career. Missed pretty much everything under the sun. They brought in competition for Boswell at the end of the season. He went on IR, and that's when I think they brought in, Kai, yeah, I think Kai Forbath. Not a name you want to see on your roster. But they brought him in, and Boswell, his confidence was shot. He rebounded very nicely in 2019 because, well, his confidence was back. And that's what I kind of think we want to hope for out of Tyler Bass is now that your confidence was shot, how do you bounce back? And can you bounce back? If you can bounce back, then that's brilliant. That's exactly what we need because as it stands, you cannot cut Tyler Bass, nor can you bring in competition. I think you're paying
That is
Tyler
true.
Bass 11 million right now, and
Yeah, it's
most of
quite
that
a
would be
bit.
dead cap if you cut him. So you're wasting $11 million on somebody that
You'd be
may or
wasting
may not be good.
$7 million this season if
Okay, yep.
if the Bills
See?
say, "You know what? We don't trust Tyler Bass whatsoever heading into this season," which I don't see or believe. I think
Oh
the
yeah,
Bills
no.
have some faith in Tyler Bass, even though McDermott, said he had to make that 51-yard kick against Carolina on Saturday. I think they have some sort of confidence in Tyler Bass. They don't also want to have $7 million in dead cap. That would only leave them with $2 million to spend because they only have $9 million in cap space now. If Tyler Bass has an inconsistent season and, has a inconsistent season and he maybe botches a few games where he just didn't make a kick or two that, the Bills needed in order to, get back into a game or potentially win a football game. Okay, then.
Mhm.
You have an out after this season. You can use it, and it'll only eat up about $3 million in dead cap. I think that's easier to swallow than this year with 7, but you only take the out if he's inconsistent or just not good enough heading
Way.
into the following season. I tallied up Tyler Bass's numbers as much as I can find from training camp and his preseason, and it looked like the numbers were right around 39 for 47 and he was kicking about an 82.9%. That
Mhm.
puts him right around where he was in his rookie season and where he was last season. So he's consistent in that aspect of where he can to his rookie season and then his inconsistent season last year. But his best season, I believe, was 21, was when he went about 87%. That's where Tyler Bass needs to be this season. And, my confidence level in Tyler Bass this season is yes, believe he can make it, but am I confident in
That's the
Tyler
spirit.
Bass in making it? Prob on a 1 to 10 scale, 49-yard kick, game on the line, I'm probably at a 4.
You know what?
I'm probably at a
A
4,
5 is about
maybe
where you
5.
should be for every unless you're lucky enough to be a Baltimore Ravens fan or heaven forbid, a Kansas City Chiefs fan, and you have a kicker that is automatic from pretty much everywhere, then you don't have to worry about this. But for everybody else with regular kickers, your confidence level should be about a 5 every time he lines up to kick. But that's just me. That's how I've thought of it for years. Watching Sean Sweezum, then watching Chris Boswell, then watching Jason Sanders.
Mhm.
That was a rough time. Trust me. Imagine a confidence level of a 3 every time he walked up to kick a football. So at the end of the day, just remain confident in Tyler Bass. But this is actually a good way to end the show too, right? So I want to bring your attention to a man that I actually think could serve that we need to keep watching. And
Mhm.
this is hypothetically okay. You know what? Let me paint you the picture. Let me paint all of Bill's Mafia the picture. Everybody that's watching. So let's say Tyler Bass has a horrible year. The cap comes off the books and the Bills cut him. So now you need a kicker. You know what they got to? You know what they need to do? They need to pray. They need to call Coach Mike Norvell out of Florida State and ask, is Ryan Fitzgerald going to declare for the NFL draft this season? He is a redshirt
Okay.
senior as of this year. And having Ryan Fitzgerald on this team would be what I would suggest. I have enjoyed watching this man at FSU for 2 years. He is absolutely incredible as a kicker. So as long as he doesn't turn into what Roberto Aguayo did, which was our last great kicker that wound up absolutely bombing at the NFL level, that would be my suggestion. Of course, he wouldn't be able to wear 88, not unless Dawson Knox left the team. But at the end of the day, that's how you get the best kickers. Is you draft a kicker late, late the fourth, fifth, even fourth's a little high, about fifth, sixth, maybe seventh round, and then bang. So just go watch the Ryan Fitzgerald tape if you want to get a little more confidence in potential paths if Tyler Bass fails. So that was the last note I wanted to end the show on. Paul, do you have anything else to end the show with?
90.5% field goals to Ryan Fitzgerald.
Hmm.
I'll take that any day of the week,
Oh,
honestly.
and you want to know? Don't forget what he did against the game against Georgia Tech. I don't want to think about it, obviously,
I
but
mean, what is it, the career long in Florida State's kicking history?
I think it
There
was the
you go.
second. No, it was the second
Second
longest field
longest.
goal
Second longest.
in FSU history. 59 yards. That is a kick that when I saw Fitzgerald make that kick, I went there and said to myself, Tyler Bass isn't making that. Not in the same ideal field conditions either. Ryan
Mhm.
Fitzgerald made it. So at the end of the day, if Tyler Bass does not have a good year and the Bills are left, having to think about kickers, they better call Coach Norvell and ask him if Ryan Fitzgerald's going to be uh, going to declare for the draft because that would be our best option if we needed a kicker. That's all I'm going to say. As long as he develops at the NFL level, we're set. But anyway, that was the last bit I wanted to really talk about just to get everybody hyped for a potential path of succession to Tyler Bass if needed. Hopefully, we won't have to worry about it because Tyler Bass is going to be elite. What are your final thoughts, Paul? Or do you have any?
I don't really have any because it was a very well informative show today. You know, I hope everyone, tomorrow, remember, not everyone makes the roster. And even if it's a player that performed really, really bad in the preseason or performed really, really good that didn't make your roster, be kind to them because
For
you don't
real.
know what these guys are going through when they find out, get the phone call, walk into the
Hmm.
coach's office, GM's office, wherever it might be, what the initial reaction they're going to have when they get the news that they're cut and the news
Hmm.
goes public.
It's
So
rough.
it's rough time, but for some of the players that make Bill's roster, anyone else's roster should be celebrated because it's a lifelong achievement for some of these guys, especially the guys that are 50, 51, and 52,
Hmm.
53.
Exactly. So that's the main point, and I agree with that. You have to remember that these are human beings fighting for a job, and it's going to suck when they eventually get the call that they didn't make the roster, that they get released, and you can only hope for the best for them, no matter where that path takes them. So at the end of the day, that's all I have to say. And what is the last bit that you have, Paul, if anything?
Tune in next week. We'll preview the first week of the NFL season. We'll do our predictions. We'll
Oh,
predict
I'm
Super
so ready.
Bowl, who's winning the Super Bowl. We'll predict
Bills,
MVP. We'll do our
Josh
yearly
Allen.
annual NFL prediction show next week. We might have a possible Connor Stakes this week. We'll hash that out right after the show and
Yeah,
get you caught up with
I need to start
everything
yelling.
Buffalo Bills football. Uh, Rosters
Just
will give
especially
you our
Bills
reaction,
football.
especially Bills football.
We
Who
need
doesn't
Bills
like
football
Bills
discussed
football?
in our life.
We do.
Well,
Yeah.
everybody around my area doesn't. I'll tell you that right now. I
All
did
right.
get a go
Thank.
Bills when I was in downtown yesterday, though, which was pretty awesome. That
Nice.
tweet's kind of blowing
There you
up
go.
too. Yeah, I got to go Bills off of three guys out fishing. So that was actually pretty cool. But anyway, if you don't have any other thoughts for the audience tonight, Paul, I believe that'll do it for the show. Make sure you guys are subscribed on YouTube. We do post some shorts there. Make sure you're following us on TikTok and Instagram as well. Or if you prefer to just listen to us talk instead of watching a video of our ugly mugs, we are available on Spotify, yeah, I believe Apple Music. We went to Apple Music,
We
right?
are
And all of
Apple
the
Podcasts,
other,
Amazon
yep,
Music, Google. Oh, well, it's not Google Podcast anymore. YouTube Podcast,
yep, all of,
Spotify.
yep, all of the audio platforms that you could possibly want us on, we're on. Um, definitely follow us on Twitter, follow the hosts on Twitter, especially me. I do post some wild things from time to time. And as a matter of fact, soon, hopefully, you'll see my first article for probably Bills on SI soon enough, maybe for Buffalo Lowdown, depending on what there is to talk about. Probably a reaction to the 53-man roster, uh, or you could just wait until unless you're wanting to see my racing stuff, then you just keep following me because I'll probably wind up writing a playoff preview article, especially after the hijinks that happened on Saturday, as is my headline. How did we witness what we witnessed at Daytona? But that's enough of that. Just make sure you guys are following us everywhere. Don't forget to respect Taron Johnson as the greatest cornerback ever, and go Bills.
Go Bills.